Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 401. We nailed it.
We're over the 400 hump.
We're well into the 400s now. We're getting old. Welcome to the show, everyone. We're very excited about tonight's episode because it is another episode of Ask Coach Roche. We have the wonderful, amazing coach David Roche joining us on the show tonight. So if you have any running related questions, training, racing, preparing for your big summer ultra or races, this is the show that you're going to want to watch, listen to, and participate in because our coach, David Roche, is here to answer all of those questions and get you prepared. We have a ton of questions pulled aside. We'll get to those in the show here. In the meantime, sit back, relax, everyone, because Ginger Runner Live begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 401. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Tuesdays to spend a little bit of it with us. Beautiful afternoon here in the Pacific Northwest.
It is our one sunny day of the month.
I feel like on Daily Brew, we've been talking so much about the weather and how wet and cold and stuff it's been here in the Pacific Northwest. But today, it's just awesome.
It is like 75 degrees, middle of summer.
Perfect. We're already planning our run for after this show, which is perfect because we have our coach on the show tonight. He's been on the show probably the most of any of our guests, but it's a show that we like to call Ask Coach Roche, where you get to ask all of your hard-hitting training questions of our amazing guest, David Roche, who we'll introduce here in just a couple of seconds. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
But we're just still... We're just really just like leaning into just nailing our intros.
Yeah.
Week after week, we're just
401
consistent with how
row.
we introduce each other. Hi. Yeah, I'm doing well. Hi, everyone. Kim Tashima Newberry here as always. If you are new, come say hi in the chat room. I'll be there throughout the show. And of course, if you have questions for our wonderful, wonderful guest, Coach David Roche, ask them in the chat room. They can be specific to you. So if you're feeling like, oh, my question is just like this, just for me kind of question, that's fine. You can ask that in there as well.
More the merrier.
Yeah.
We also like to start our shows by thanking some individuals who help make these shows happen. It is our GR crew. It is because of them that we are able to do our live streams every week, our Daily Brew live stream every day, our reviews, our films. We have some really cool projects happening this summer. It is all because of the GR crew. If you'd like to join the GR crew, it's an amazing global community of runners just like you, going through the same things that you're going through, there to support and one another. Head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to some really cool perks, including our Discord server. We have a ton of questions that our GR crew members have asked on our Discord server. So they'll get first priority tonight. But if you are watching live and you're not a GR crew member, drop your question into the live chat. Of course, you can do that. One individual in particular at that top tier we love to shout out at the beginning of every episode, Brian Sands. Thank you, Brian Sands, for being just a true inspiring individual, a GR crew member. We're just so thankful to know you. And he's an amazing athlete himself. So he loves supporting all sorts of ultra running and running projects, other YouTube channels. So he's just a wonderful member of so many communities. And we're thankful that he's a member of ours. In addition, we have a couple of episodes sponsored by OnX Backcountry. OnX Backcountry is a really great training tool. It's an app that you can download from the App Store right now. Basically, it's a mapping software, backcountry land management type software where you can basically drive up to a trailhead, pull out your OnX app, click any of the trails around you, and it'll tell you like the distance, the elevation. It'll show you the grade. That's sort of the feature that I love the most, is that shows you what % grade each trail is. So you can kind of see really tough sections, technical sections, and things like that. There's great reports on trails and things. So we're thankful for their sponsorship of a number of episodes of Ginger Runner Live. There's a link in the description that will get you 20% off their annual membership. Please use it. Check it out. Just by using it, it shows them that you support the show and them and all that good stuff. So you know how it works. Sponsorships, nothing new. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show our wonderful dear friend and coach.
Is he a deer?
He's our dear friend, David Roche.
Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I was most excited about the picture you used to promote this episode, which I'm just like, Ethan, whatever's on the internet is fine. You can find some of my old work in porn if you want. But no, what Ethan went and found is a picture of me reading a book on my side looking like in my Hoka Evo Speedgoat shoes. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like it looks really chill. I'm also wondering what
Super
book I'm
chill.
reading. I don't know. Do you know
So
what book I'm reading there?
We can only assume.
I don't know what book you were reading, but we did one of our questions on our Discord server was from Yasa, and it was in regards to what book you were reading in the thumbnail.
We have our bets going. I was thinking like Harry Potter, Chamber of Secrets. It could have been Live, Laugh, Love, or what's that one? Laugh, Love. What's the? Come on, you know this
Pray,
book.
Love.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Live, Laugh, Love.
Do you remember at all, David, what book that was?
It's Eat, Pray, Like. Love, I need to get to. No, it's the Kama Sutra for Dummies.
Yes, for dummies.
Yeah. Because like my thinking is like, I'm not the Kama Sutra, the sex part, whatever. I'm much more interested in the mobility part. Traditional PT and hasn't really done it for me. So I want to see if I can step it up to the next level. This is going to be the big training stimulus that we all need. Watch out, world.
You already have written a book. I can't wait to now read the next book. If these are the books that you're using for possibly research purposes.
Oh yeah, it's mixing business and pleasure, but emphasis on the business.
Speaking of pleasure, you've already made the announcement. We're so happy for both you and Megan. There's going to be a new member.
Wait. I love it. After the Kama Sutra discussion.
Come on, how is that?
Speaking of pleasure.
How is that not the perfect? How is that not the perfect transition?
I mean, speaking of pleasure, let's talk about where babies come from.
I don't know. That process is just talk about business. I feel like there was like peeing on strips. There was timelines. There was pressure. That was bordering on the business. People don't talk to you about that. Like it gets intense. So it's so great. We had a wonderful. I need to get my computer on Do Not Disturb. It's digging, but had a wonderful appointment today for baby scan at like 18 and a half weeks. Everything's looking really healthy, which after Megan's health scares is really good. So it's a high risk pregnancy. And so just keeping our fingers crossed. I'm currently in theoretically what will be the baby's room in the future. Right now, we just got like a bed that looks like it came straight from Shawshank Redemption back there.
I think those are the kind of beds that newborn babies sleep in.
Those,
you guys are doing great.
Beautiful crib.
That's what I'm
Great
thinking.
crib.
That we're gonna put in some massage tools for the baby so that they're foam rolling from day one. That's basically all I know about parenting right now is that you got to start them young with the Theragun. But beyond that, I'm just learning as I go.
Works great on those little soft bones.
Yeah.
This show started off rails and hasn't even bothered to get back on, and I don't want it to. Because now I'm like, what book did you read in that thumbnail?
Actually, the actual book I was reading is pretty interesting. I was thinking of making a joke off that. I'm not going to. I want to get this on. It's called this is going to be a tone shift. It's called A Matter of Death and Life.
Okay.
It's a story it's a book by Irv Yalom, who's essentially a therapist that counsels on death. And as his wife was dying in their late 80s or early 90s, they co-wrote a book together. And it's essentially looking back on their life and reflecting on a lot of these big themes. And there's a lot of effing. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's incredibly touching and meaningful. So actually, I really recommend that book to people if you want just kind of a step back to remind you of, okay, big picture stuff that we can all lose sight of a little bit. And he's an expert in the field, so it's also very helpful in that regard.
Awesome. Well, we are thankful to have you on the show today, David, because I feel like we have, well, one, it's great to catch up with you. We always love being able to catch up with you and seeing you in person. But we're right on the cusp of summer, and we know that a lot of crew members and a lot of members of the running community have big summer plans. Obviously, the last few summers have been tough to sort of plan around big races and travel and that sort of thing. But as we begin to see things begin to open up and races get to host again and everything like that, we're seeing a lot of people make big plans. So big A races, big B races leading up to A races and stuff like that. Anyone who's watching live, if you have questions in regards to your summer events, feel free to drop into the chat. Kim will pull them aside. But I kind of wanted to start with As we start getting into these summer months, what are some of your best tips for runners to stay healthy and to get themselves through the summer without big injuries or anything like that happening? So what are some of your big tips to help people training for these big A races after 2 years?
So I think the hardest thing, as soon as the trails really open up and you're like, oh, well, I can run more, is letting all the little things fall by the wayside that
Mm,
support running. And I think it's more essential than ever. So a list of things that I think you absolutely need to do, starting from when you wake up. First thing is, after you wake up, just make sure you hydrate. It doesn't need to be a ton, just get that going. Before you run, make sure you're doing a nice warm up. I have some online, but the most simple one is lunge matrix leg swings. It's a Coach Jay Johnson routine. It works in 5 minutes. It's bonus strength work, and it gets you going. Like, I feel like even if you have a really quick turnaround after waking up, it works. But also, if you just got out of the office chair, it's great. So then when you run, do all that, finish up, come back home, do a little bit of light stretching if you're into that, leg swings if you're not, some either foam rolling or massage gun right away. And also consider getting like some protein and carbs in you right away.
mm,
My current favorite thing is Ultragen by First Endurance. I mentioned it on our podcast today and got so many pro athletes that said, oh, I've actually been taking that too. So it's one of those things that I think is a thinly kept secret, but essentially it's just protein and carbs. You can get that from a lot of different sources. And then you can get off the clock after that. But those things around running, I think, are indispensable. And then add strength work 3 times a week. The mountain legs routine that's online goes a long way. And if you keep that going, you'll be able to stay healthy. It'll support your running. It'll help you run faster. And I mean, it only adds up to, a few minutes at a time. But those few minutes can feel so daunting. So just make it a part of your routine.
That's exactly the word I was going to use to describe it when I look at it in my schedule or trying to in my daily routine, is that it's daunting doing a leg. Whether it's mountain legs, the routine that David created, that destroys your legs, or just general maintenance. Like, I always have this aversion to general maintenance, even though I know it's good for me. It's important. It's especially important for longevity and getting through a season without injury. What is it? Why is it that people? I'm talking for myself here. Why is it that I don't want to do it?
And it's even
Oh,
it even applies to like having like when you are done your run, getting your protein shake or your smoothie. Like, half the time I'm like, I don't really
I don't
want
really
it.
want
And
it.
you're usually the one to be
Yeah.
like, get in here and make your thing.
Why
yeah.
am I an idiot?
It's freaking torture is why. I don't know either. I'm not a psychologist. No, no, I agree. Like, I swear by Athletic Greens, for example. It's this multivitamin that has a bunch of micronutrients in it that we've seen wondrous results with. But just mixing it is so much work for me. Even though it's like an 8-ounce thing, it takes literally 10 seconds. I find that if I don't do it the night before, I'm not going to do it when I wake up. And so I found that setting up things that make you accountable is key. So for me, night before, I'll set it up. It's in the fridge. I come down. That's my hydration rate when I wake up, and I don't have to think about it.
Mm.
And so I think removing those barriers with thinking is so key. Like, that's been huge for me, which is why just around the run, I think, is the most important part. Like, the warm up, you're going to love doing it once you realize how good it makes you feel. The stuff right after the run, just view it as a part of your run. And then you can just get off the clock and not think about it. And that
Sure.
includes mountain legs. Do it right after you run. Don't wait. Because if you do, it's going to fall by the wayside. So, I'm sure that there's some really fancy psychological principles for it, but it is so tough. But for your listeners, I mean, I'm serious that we've seen great results with Athletic Greens. Do you guys have an Athletic Greens connection?
Yes. Yeah. So actually, we started taking it because you mentioned, like,
You
hey,
did.
I did. Yeah, I started taking it because as I'm getting older, I'm sort of like looking at things that I need to balance my both eating habits and blah, blah, blah. You recommended it because you have a lot of athletes that have used it. I had never heard of it other than through various podcasts and stuff like that. So I just was like, but I started using it, and I don't mind the taste. I don't mind the routine. Every morning I
That's
do it.
your morning, and that's
That's
built
my
into
morning.
your morning routine now.
Yep. I do it when I'm making coffee. So I like do my bottle and I shake it while I'm making the coffee for the both of us. So it's very easy. So that's one of those things where normally I would never have added that to my schedule. But now that it is a part of it, it's there. and it's just
Do you guys
a
have
part
a
of it.
sponsorship that we can like plug for this? Are you guys
Not
sponsored?
yet. They emailed like, hey, maybe we can sponsor, and I'm like, maybe.
It's potentially
It's
in the
potentially,
works.
yeah. Well, hopefully, it'd be great.
Okay, well, I'm
but-
not going to jump in and say a code. Wait for that code. Wait till GRL gets on it.
If anyone is watching and wants to get Athletic Greens now, this is non-spawned, by the way. David is and does have a code that you can use right now. We may have a code in the future, but David has one now. Go use it.
Yeah, athleticgreens.com/Kama Sutra.
Someone's gonna go there. What if that exists?
That probably is someone's
No,
code.
no. So, okay, seriously though, athleticgreens.com/swap, SWAP. I know it sounds ridiculous. Like, the reason that I mention this is that we track this data in our athletes and have seen like more movement for things like HRV than we have for other interventions. It's probably just a placebo, like for me personally, because I'm so susceptible to the placebo effect. But it gets back into this whole idea of self-care and making time for it. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily the only special thing. It's more about once you combine that with all these little things, it adds up. And those cumulative things of investing in yourself really do matter and do change how your body adapts. So just try to make room for yourself around your runs rather than just being like, okay, my run is the only time I have. Because if you do that, I think summer can be a time of fatigue and lethargy and injury because, suddenly you're able to run more, run faster, and invest more time in it. And that comes with risks.
Yeah. Yeah, the HRV data is surprising that you've been posting with a lot of your athletes. So a lot of your athletes are giving you that data and that feedback, heart rate
But
variability.
Not clinically validated. So, I think that's on our podcast, we talk about all the disclaimers and, they're a confident company because the reason we got sponsored is we were talking about some of the data and I said, this stuff tastes like crap. I hate it. But they heard how much I still drink it. So I had done this forever. So I always think it's good when a company doesn't care how they're marketed. They're just like, yeah, if you get the word out, we're fine. So yeah, I feel like that, but much more importantly, make sure you're doing the warm up, make sure you're doing the mountain legs. Start tomorrow if you haven't. Lunge matrix leg swings before you run, mountain legs and foam rolling after, and you are good to go.
Lunge matrix leg swings, where can we find that?
If you just write lunge matrix leg swings online, it'll bring you to a million videos by Coach Jay Johnson. And he coaches a lot of professional road runners. But basically, if you get to any trailhead in Boulder, you'll see people doing the lunge matrix, which, just the side to side things. And I think that that's always a wonderful field test for what actually works. Because when the margins in trail running, the margins are much blurrier. The things that go into a good race and a bad race are, they're so multivariable. Whereas in Olympic road running in particular, when you're looking for a minute fraction of a percentage, every little thing matters. So if they're doing things like this, then, and it only takes a few minutes and it adds bonus strength, it's probably something that we can all do.
And especially because we could do it right now. We can do it right now before our A race, our B race, whatever races we have coming up in the next
I would
6
say
months.
If you haven't done any lunges, you might be sore for a day, but after that, you'll never feel it again. I mean, it literally just gets you going.
Excellent. Great tips. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this is an Ask Coach Roche episode, so we want to prioritize all of your questions for David Roche. Kim, you have a ton. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions. These first few will be from our Discord server. First question is from Slow Man Running, and they ask Coach Roche, how much does your daily activity impact or help your ultra training? I'm training for a 100-mile race in 2025. I exercise 7 days a week, run 4 days, strength training 3 days. I run about 40 kilometers per week, but with my work, I'm moving another 40 to 50 kilometers per week. A, is that enough? B, is that the same as running 70 to 80 kilometers a week? So this person, we know who this is. They do a lot of walking, a lot of time on feet at work. So they're just wondering if that combined with their runs equal.
Yeah, no. So I think that that's an amazing point. Coach Alan Cousins, who's a physiologist and coaches a lot of professional triathletes, he calls this zone zero training. where let's say there's either a 3-zone model or a 5-zone model of training. This is something that's below the bottom end of the traditional first zone of like running and endurance training. And the theory is that there's a ton of benefits there for the very same thing that you do get from very easy activity, primarily capillarization around working muscles and aerobic efficiency more generally. The problem is that the musculoskeletal loading is very different. So I don't think there's a one-to-one comparison. I don't think you should think of it like that. You should think, okay, this will support my growth. This is productive. This doesn't need to like be thought of in the same breath as running miles or focused hiking miles or anything like that. So I try to encourage athletes, and this goes for cross training too. Don't be like, oh, well, this hour on the bike or hour on the elliptical is equal to this many miles running, because they're different things. And we don't care about miles running totally. That's not the proxy to look at. If you're running 40 or 50K a week and being really active in the other time, that will play like more aerobic stress that will set you up for things like 100-mile training in the future. So really embrace it. And that doesn't just go for this listener. That goes for everyone. Zone 0 training, as much as you need to recover, it's great to go out on a 3-mile walk with your dog, or to be a parent and have to get parent strength where you're lifting the kid up. And I don't know why they're throwing him over their shoulder with that motion. But,
right onto the bed behind you.
yeah, exactly. They're going to foam roll back there. But all of that adds into the same type of aerobic development. And it might be one thing that's really lacking from a lot of people's day-to-day lives. I know it does for mine. And so embrace it. Embrace like how life can be so variable for different people, and don't try to compare your volume to others, and don't try to compare your volume to other versions of yourself. Just say, okay, this version of me is making the most of their constraints, and it is helping aerobically, even if it doesn't add up to my, Strava running totals every week.
So in regards to someone who's putting in a lot of time just through work on their feet, whether they're walking around their office or anything like that, it's zone 0. You're not necessarily counting it towards your weekly totals. So in this particular case, training for a 100-miler, should they still be going for these volume totals running and not taking into account zone 0?
Yeah, terrific question. And so I coached one athlete one time who had a treadmill desk. And over the course of a day, they would walk like 20 miles or not, something wild like that. Because if you're just walking 1 or 2 miles an hour, it adds up so much. And that was a terribly hard stress, and it totally took away from their training. So I would say that, zone 0 as a background thing that you're doing in the context of your life, whether it's like your work requires you to do it, or you're going on a few mile walk or easy bike rides or anything like that, fine. But if you're just starting to accumulate tons of volume, either for its own sake or in work things that you have to do, you have to start accounting for that stress. So this athlete that's walking 40 or 50K a week, they're probably never going to be able to get to like super high volume, and they need to really listen to their body and pay attention to recovery rates, because that's a lot of loading, even as it's productive. And so just like running is a stress, this is a different type of stress. And, you need to make iterative changes in stress, because if you ever take a big leap up, so if this athlete adds 30K per week running to this big total, they're going to be most likely overflowing that pot if they're at all on the edge. And so making those changes in small ways is key. One thing I would say with that work schedule, I would try to get a rest day into that like life in some context, even it's once every 2 weeks where you're not on your feet for 10K or something like that, because that will add up over time. And I could see this athlete going down, patterns of like small injuries and fatigue and not knowing exactly why, because they're not offloading their body. Like evolutionarily, physiologically, we're made to sometimes offload. It doesn't need to be all the time, doesn't need to be weekly even, but make sure you are offloading.
Great insight.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so, man, I can't tell you how many times I've like sat here and gone, I should get a treadmill for my desk or something. Like just thinking like I need to put more time on feet and doing all these additional things, not considering the fact that, yeah, it might add more volume. It might add more time on feet. Sure. But it also is that stress that even if you're keeping your weekly mileage running the same and you start adding 30K, 40, 50K a week of just walking at your desk, that's still stress. So the stress on stress on stress, right?
Pretty sure Darth Vader would use a standing desk. They're moderately evil. And walking desks, I mean, don't even get me started on that. That's some sort of Sith Lord I'm not even aware of. No, I mean, the hard part here is recovery is the biggest key. If you're being active all the time, that sucks. No body can adapt to that and adapt to significant running training. So, it's this complex balancing act, and you need to work within the confines of, okay, being sedentary fully is probably not good unless you're training a ton. That goes for, like, let's say the East African athletes who are notorious for or famous for, they'll do their double or triple sessions and do nothing the rest of the day, like 500 steps the rest of the day, if that. That's different because they're being active all the time. But for most of us, some activity, AM, PM, light is key. Being active AM every hour after till you go to sleep, that's just going to keep your nervous system on. And I bet if we were looking at their metrics, they would tank. So, especially an athlete that works really hard, needs to constantly pay attention to their body, ideally checking in with their feedback, whatever feedback they have on their physiology all the time. Because the key with running progression is you need to put out a lot of power, and you can't put out a lot of power if you're chronically fatigued, whether that's from walking a lot or it's from parenting or, work more generally, which is why standing desks are for fascists. No, sorry.
Ethan's desk is currently in the standing position.
No.
Oh, it's not?
No, it's in the sitting position.
You must have put it down.
I did, because I was tired of sanding.
He was doing a Jedi mind trick to the desk.
Apparently to me too.
Yeah,
That's how much I pay attention to.
When I'm editing or making music, which I'm in the process of right now with the new album and stuff, I tend to not like to create standing because sometimes it just feels like I'm trying to do too much at once.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I have no idea how people do it. My creative juices only flow if I am chill. No, I actually, the science on standing desks is much more complicated. I'm not against them by any means. I am against standing all day. Just like the idea is all of this stuff needs to happen in moderation. We're not made to do that. We're not like, all of our physiology is made to have on, off, on, off, on, off. So one of the adjustable desks, great. Standing all day out of some, I don't know, almost like 1500s monk self-discipline. That's counterproductive to the max.
I do remember it happened last week where I was standing and working. I was editing at the desk, and my Aura Ring was like, "You sure you don't want to get up and move around?" I was like, "I've been standing for about 4 hours. I haven't been moving much, but no, I'm standing." Do you want to grab that guy?
Yeah, just a comment in the chat from Sarah. Sarah says, super helpful. Had also considered treadmill desk. Better to focus on consistency of my actual workouts. And Drew mentions, now that you mention it, I don't recall ever seeing Darth Vader sitting down.
See? What am I saying? You show me Darth Vader in like a gazebo chilling, and I'm showing you somebody that goes to the light side.
There's probably a GIF that is Darth Vader in a gazebo, and I kind of want to see it. Lots of questions.
Yeah, a question from Michael. This is from our Discord server. Michael asked, feeling good about my power hike uphill, but wondering if you could speak to the best techniques to progress further. Been strength training legs and working on my pace on hill repeats to pick up my speed and slowly edge towards running more hills. Am I missing anything except maybe patience?
Oh, you're doing it all right if you're focusing on it. I mean, I think let's start with hiking. The big key, as you've nailed, is form. Form is the place that everyone has a lot of room for growth. So think of 3 things. 1, strong forward lean. Your body needs to go into the hill because that's what engages your glutes and really gets that power center going. The second is how the lever of your leg forms. So a lot of people walk with a straight leg because that's kind of how we're used to walking. But when you're walking up hills, you want to actually bend your knee, much like you're running. You want to have knee drive. And so if you do knee drive up the hill, much like running, you're going to get a lot more power, again, from the power centers in your glutes. And the third is that your arms are part of the workout. So, you can do anything. I have some tutorials online. Hands on your quads or knees and pushing as if they're pulls is one thing that you can then transition with swinging your arms really strong. And if you do all those things, anyone listening to this can become a superstar hiker. But then the question is the hike mixing with the run and when that happens. I encourage almost all athletes to try to run more hills over time, not because it's necessarily faster on the day you do it, on the day of training, but because over time you might be able to train yourself to run more and more hills and you'll get faster over the course of months and years. So, for this athlete, start with more shallow hills. Again, focus on the forward lean. A lot of people all of a sudden lean back when they run up hills. Terrible. Like if you look at the best climbers, they're all leaning forward into the hill. Really focus on that. Really focusing on relaxing your body. Whereas hiking uphill is like, there's a lot of motion in that ocean. When you're running uphill, it's a quiet thing. And for example, at Tiger Claw, I ran up Section Line, the steep trail there. And not to say that everyone should do that, but the point being, like, if I hiked that at the same speed, I would be going so fast. I would just be pumped. But if you look at any video of me running from that Ethan shared, it was like, there's very little motion. So really economy of motion in your run. And it can be just 10 steps at first, but incorporate that more and more, and always view the hiking as an opportunity. And I think hills can totally change in complexion, where hiking is your ultimate, like the arrow in your quiver that you can bring out. And then running becomes the break from hiking. And if you combine those things, you can be, rock star, whether it's the Hard Rock 100 or it's just, your backyard trail that goes up like 200 feet per mile, and you're looking to get a little faster on it.
There's a video that I've been wanting to put together of sort of acknowledging the fact that power hiking is a tool that you can use at any given point that might actually perform better than running or slowly hiking. I think a lot of the misconception with ultra running specifically, or trail running, is that when people are hiking or walking, they're wasting time or they're wasting energy or they're moving slower. And I can't tell you the number of times in races where I've been passed by people who are very efficient power hikers, who they're not running past me, they're breathlessly walking faster past me. And it's like, that power hiking is such a tool that when dialed in and trained properly is an incredible thing for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with most of our athletes that are going to Western states who are competing for top 10 finishes about how we're going to utilize hiking in this race. You can hike your way into the top 10. You can like run almost no hills at Western states and finish top 10, as wild as that seems. So, you want to constantly work on running. You don't want to fall into this habit where every uphill always will mean a walk, because you're not going to get faster over time. You might be just as good at hundreds, but your overall running economy isn't going to improve as much as it possibly could. But it's definitely not a weakness. I think trail running is walking. Like, in any context, we call it trail running, but we essentially mean you're going to go trail, run, walk, eat pizza. All those things are included in the process.
Got it. Makes perfect sense.
Ingen has a comment in the chat just in regards to this, saying that I'm always worried about turning my easy run into a not easy run when I try running the hills. So is there just a time and place for it if it's a prescribed easy run?
So I actually wrote on that exact question in Runner magazine a few months ago. I think it was like in the actual print magazine. So print's dead. No one probably read it. My actual thinking there is that that's a place where easy can become a broader range of things. When you're going uphill, there's much less impact on your body. So the musculoskeletal strain is much less. And the aerobic strain, while that can get severe if you add it up over the course of like an hour, most of our easy runs aren't that long. So I still want athletes to try to run more on their easy runs, even if it ventures in towards moderate. Because again, if you're not training the muscular processes that you're going to use to run, you're not going to get better at running. Like, hiking is great. It's not going to make you a better runner. Unless like it's a hugely low hanging fruit in terms of any type of training would make you better. Like, you could go out and, roller ski and that would make you way better or whatever. So you still want to try to run a little bit more over time. And this also goes for, my mom's in her 70s and she's running training for the first time in her whole life. And, she run walks, but she's just trying to run just a little bit more. And she's noticed as soon as she turned off that switch from I walk on uphills to I run a little bit more, everything's gotten faster. And that's kind of the element we can all harness. But it takes a little bit of a reframing of some of the internal narratives that I think as soon as you start out the sport, a lot of us might get. Like, I want everyone, including my 71-year-old mom, to train like a badass elite athlete, not be like, oh, well, I'm just the person that's never going to run, anything that goes uphill.
Love that. Your mom's badass, by the way.
Yeah, she is badass, but she's beginner at 71. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Monica from our Discord. Monica asked, what does the research say about distance running and cartilage health? Is it protective? Is it harmful? Are there things we can do to improve our odds against cartilage injury and degradation as we age?
The unsatisfying answer, as it usually is with these types of physiological processes, is it depends. So Megan, actually, my wife, for those that don't know, has wrote a book chapter, like a textbook chapter on osteoarthritis in the knees and cartilage loss and things like that. And they found that in general, activity is protective to a point, but overuse becomes lack of protective. And if there's already breakdown, then you can get more breakdowns. So it's this, mixed bag where if you're operating a ton on something that's already hurt, it might degrade. But at the outset, before that, it's usually protective. And there are some supplements that seem to help with that. In fact, Athletic Greens has a few of them related to like tart cherry and stuff, but also glucosamine chondroitin can be good for cartilage health, particularly in the knees for osteoarthritis in athletes 50s and 60s. So think about things like that. And definitely activity is good, but pain is not great. So make sure you're still listening to pain as you try to, increase your activity levels.
Awesome.
Question from our live chat. This is from Anthony. Anthony says, I haven't been able to pee during a 50-mile race. I'm going to race my first 100-miler this summer and I sweat a lot and I'm a salty sweater. Any advice? I usually drink 34 ounces of fluid an hour.
Oh man, athlete after my own heart. I am such a salty, deep sweater. I've come to realize, and it took time. Like the hard part about hydration relative to fueling. So let's say fueling to start. Athletes generally operate within a relatively narrow band. So I'll say 250 to 350 calories per hour is the way to go, which is, 250, that can go all the way down for, an athlete that is extremely light and small, and 350 might go for a huge athlete with a big metabolic rate. And that's pretty narrow, right? Like the metabolic system is, constrained by how much our guts can absorb. And so you kind of want to stay within narrow bounds, though. That's a deeper question. With hydration, I have seen athletes that barely need to hydrate. There's a number of them out there, but a lot of them are the champion ultra runners that you might have heard of that we coach. Like some of them have 10 to 12 ounces per hour sweat rates or replenishment rates. If I had that much, I would conk out for sure very early. And for athletes like you, Anthony, what I would say is experiment on some of your key long runs, going even more. Be careful. You make sure there's always electrolytes. You do not, this is something to talk about with your doctor. Overhydration is horrible and maybe the main cause of people getting extremely sick and even dying from these events. But if 34 is not leading you to pee, you're probably safe to add some more electrolyte fluid. It'll also get you more calories. See what happens if you go up to 40 and then go from there. I did a 50K a few weeks ago where I finished feeling really strong, really good. And, the event took it was under 4 hours and I was probably having 44 ounces per hour.
Wow.
And I'm not huge. So
Was it hot?
It was early season hot, like 70s, high 70s,
Yeah.
but not hot. And the reason is, so I was like downing a bottle between every aid station and then at later aid stations, I was drinking a bottle and then getting another bottle. And it just points out that like every body is so different on this. And so making, again, iterative changes can be hugely beneficial, especially if you've never peed in a race, you covered in salt. You're like me. I am currently sweating so hard right now. Yeah, it's like I'm one giant pit stain is my body. So, I
can smell.
identify with
No,
the
it doesn't
struggle.
smell. It doesn't
It doesn't smell. It doesn't smell.
No,
smells like nothing.
yeah, it's delightful.
That's interesting because I find that I'm different as well now with hydration than I feel like I was at the beginning. And of course, all the advice is like drink X amount per hour, like that should be your goal, and then sort of learning over time that, well, maybe my body is different than that number that everyone touts.
And even
sort
sweat tests, they
Yeah.
have things. They have wearables now that people can wear. We haven't seen a ton of reliability on those. They have sweat tests that you can do at home. They have sweat tests that you can do in the lab. All of it ends up not necessarily having a one-to-one relationship with what we see athletes excel with health-wise in races and performance-wise. So that's where experimentation comes in. It's hard to do in training. Like I'm never hydrating as much in training as I do in racing. But in racing, it can be a little bit easier, especially if there's a lot of aid stations. So Yeah, the small changes are, I think, the big way to do it, but be super careful and almost always make sure there are electrolytes in your water, especially sodium. If you hydrate with just water that much, it is going to end badly, even if you have that high of a sweat rate. Like you're just gonna,
Interesting.
there's a, it can get scary. So be careful.
Got it.
And then I guess just follow-up question with regards to if we're going on our shorter summer trail runs, should we, one, always be hydrating? And two, if we are hydrating on those shorter efforts, should we have electrolytes in our water at all times?
Amazing question. I think this is a place where trust your coach and your nutritionist, but what we say is start your run hydrated. Like I like the rule of if ideally you're peeing in like the first 3 miles once, but not peeing like 5 times. And you can just get in a routine of what that looks like for you. Um, and then don't, I don't have athletes bring water. I would prefer they don't on runs that are under 60 or 70 minutes. Unless you're in a very hot place that is like I mean, let's say dew point 75, 80 or above, that type of thing. Because not that you can't train dehydration. I just don't want athletes to think that they constantly need this. The body is made to go through these ups and downs. So on really short runs or shorter runs, I wouldn't mess with it. On runs that start to get over an hour, then can bring a bottle. And if possible, always throw some electrolytes in there. It helps absorption. It's good for stomach training and it'll just improve performance. And since performance drives adaptation, you want to constantly keep that going through any means necessary.
This is great. This is great advice. Things
Yeah.
to think about. I feel like we don't talk.
We don't talk about pee enough.
Yeah, we don't talk about peeing 3 miles in a trail run enough. We honestly just haven't talked about like hydration specifically enough on this show. We talk about it in rough
Well, I think
circles around
people
athletes and performance.
people avoid it specifically because it's a hard topic. Like,
Yeah.
those that are in the know can know that everything I said, I'm like giving it 10 disclaimers for a reason. But if we're talking about optimizing performance, this is one of the places I have really direct conversations, particularly professional athletes that are pushing the limits. It's like, you know, one of the very first things I saw is fatigue resistance, this metric that we use to determine how someone might perform in a longer race. It's
Mm.
really cool how it works. We don't even know the exact cause, likely some genetic, likely some background. We saw that the people that scored off the charts on fatigue resistance, the outliers, the people like Claire Gallagher, sometimes have extremely low sweat rates. And that's confusing. Is that because those adaptations correspond with each other? Like they're connected in some physiological mechanism? Perhaps. But what I think is more likely is just that the people that have very low sweat rates don't have to deal with the insidious process of dehydration that happens in the longer events. So if an athlete that has a higher sweat rate is able to hydrate adequately, I think they're going to be okay. But the problem is as soon as you start to make those recommendations, you're running into like physiological fire that like the downside of overhydration is much more common, I think, even than the downside of underhydration, except at like the hottest races. So, that's why it's like so individual and play with it a little bit. But, what I found with myself, my best races, I have gotten to the finish line and not needed a drink. Like that's which is, like when I won Way Too Cool, it was a cool year. Like a lot of my best races have been in rain and I was hydrating a ton. And almost all of my worst races, I get to the finish and it's like, I could drink 5 bottles. And I think that for me in particular, my endurance is partially modulated by a very high sweat rate. But it likely applies for everyone that isn't an outlier on the low end. The problem is a lot of the science comes from outliers on the low end who then we extrapolate to the grand whole. And I think that is selling us all short.
Got it. I think maybe one more question for the main show, and then we'll move right into the after show with David.
Sure. This question is from the live chat from Corin. Corin says, I have twin baby girls. Is it wise or healthy to push a jogging stroller on regular runs, or should I save runs with my girls for once per week?
Oh yeah, it's totally great. So yeah, it's awesome. Make sure you're not doing that every single run forever because it is slightly different biomechanical loading depending on how you push it, where there's hills, things like that. But it's about as direct as you can get crossover. It's like if let's say biking is 40% relative to running in terms of like cross training overlap, stroller jogging is probably 97%. So you don't want to just constantly be at 97%. Like some of the runs solo, great, especially workouts. But I have an athlete that's doing Western States who I think is going to absolutely destroy it, has a shot at the podium, who did her final big steep hill workout with a jogging stroller. So, and I loved it. It's like more resistance, fine. So embrace it, embrace that time. I think it can be, a really healthy bonding time. And, it's a great way to fit it into the context of your life. So I love it. I've never seen an issue in training. There's not great studies on it, but a lot of the times the athletes that I see do that often perform better in races. And so view it as your secret weapon, I think.
Our guest tonight has been the always wonderful David Roche. We are so lucky to know him, have him as a coach, but also to be able to pick his brain on shows like this. So GR Crew, you know what to do. Thank him for being on the show. And if you have residual questions, you can reach out to him or stick around for another Ask Coach Roche, which we'll have obviously very soon in the future. But David, we of course want to give you the opportunity to shout out anything that you have going on, including the Some Work All Play podcast. I know that you have a brand new Patreon if everyone wants to support David and Megan on Patreon. But David, I'll let you take it away. What do you got?
Well, Some Work All Play podcast, rate and subscribe to that thing. And then patreon.com/swap, SWAP. We do bonus podcasts every week. But much more importantly is the message I wanted to give people in summer, which is, okay, it's getting warmer. You might be sweating like I am, and you're going out for a run, or you're a mile into the run, and you're thinking about what you're wearing, how your body's feeling, what's jiggling where. Let's try to recenter those thoughts right now on the idea that your body is fucking perfect the way it is. We internalize this narrative about bodies that is so odd when you think about it. Like, if you have a little thing like on the bottom of your stomach, people will be like, "Oh my God!" Like, the people look at themselves in the mirror and be like, "Oh my God, this thing," and it's like, why? That thing that you're judging so harshly is such an integral part of you, and it has no bearing on your attractiveness, your performance, anything like that. And if you're, 700 pounds, even, like, what we conceive of as the perfect human body is all this cultural societal thing that is mixed in with a lot of crappy judgments and ideas that don't hold any scientific weight and certainly hold no weight with what makes us happy. So my big message is embrace your body. It's going to have to be you're going to have to fake it. And might be faking it for your whole life, because we're taught all these things. Like, I look into the mirror all the time now, knowing all this and saying all this, judging myself so harshly. But I'm always going to be stripping down my whole life until I'm 95, because that's what makes me feel comfortable. You don't have to strip down, but if you're a woman out there and you like feeling yourself in the sports bra, do it. It's where it's at. If you're a guy and you're out there and you just like to feel the chest hair blow in the wind, do it. Similarly, if dressing up more makes you feel better, do it. But don't worry about what other people think or what you think other people think. You're so perfect the way you are. The people that love you just want you to be fulfilled. And the people that might judge you are all punk ass bitch motherfuckers, and you can ignore them. So, I love you. Everyone that loves you. And so you try to love you too.
I couldn't have asked for a better ending to our main show. Always, David somehow managed to find a way to hit a home run, and I could not agree with David more. As someone who's going through that exact conversation every single day, it is a needed reminder to shut that shit down and remind yourself that you're alive, you're healthy, and you get to go outside and enjoy the incredible things that nature provides. Our guest tonight has been David Roche. We love having him on the show. Another Ask Coach Roche episode in the bag. We are going to move right into our after show with David. We're going to keep him around for just a couple more minutes, but we are going to ask some of the questions that were asked on Discord that we did not get to in tonight's show. If you would like to join our after show and ask those remaining questions that maybe you didn't get asked during the main show, all you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to our after shows, both past, current, and future. Plus, we do our daily live streams called Daily Brew. It's a lot of fun. We do our reviews, films, all that good stuff. So consider joining us over on Patreon, as well as David and Megan on Patreon too. Support them. We do like to end our shows now by recognizing members of the community who go above and beyond. We call it our GR Crew Member of the Week. Kim, who is this week's GR Crew Member?
This week's GR Crew Member of the Week is Drew Slate. And Drew wrote on our Discord that they finished the Run Your Town 24-hour challenge this past weekend with 37.4 miles, which was 38 laps. The challenge is put on by their local running store, and you run or walk a 0.96 mile loop for as much or as little as you want within the allotted 24 hours. This was the first time Drew did it. Drew also wanted to give a big shout out to his wife, who doesn't even run, and she ended up getting 17 loops in.
Dang. That's
so
amazing.
Congrats, Drew, and Drew's wife as well.
Well done, you two. Congratulations on being our GR crew members of the week. That's going to wrap up our Ginger Runner Live episode number 401. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We'll see you tomorrow for Daily Brew if you're a crew member, or we'll see you later this week or next week for Ginger Runner Live. Thanks, all.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope you have a great rest of your week. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and part of the hardest. Bye.
Ginger